In Texas, they're going hog wild over wild hogs. The feral animals are causing hundreds of millions of dollars of damage to crops across the state.
One perfectly timed button press. That's all it takes for a farmer to capture an entire group of feral hogs. For decades, farmers tried almost everything to control the growing population of these destructive animals, from simple hunting and traditional traps to helicopters and large-scale eradication programs. But no matter what farmers did, the hogs eventually found a way to survive. But now, with cameras, smart traps, and a smartphone, farmers have found a way to capture entire groups at once. And according to early reports, the results are remarkable. Farmers are seeing fewer hogs, less crop damage, and a level of population control they haven't experienced in years. So what is this new trapping method, and how is it proving to be so effective? Let's get into it. America's most dangerous invader. Today, more than 2.6 million feral hogs roam across Texas. Nearly half of all the wild pigs in the United States live in a single state. And every year, their population grows by another 18 to 21%, despite ongoing control efforts. But they were never supposed to be here. It all happened because of two decisions made centuries apart, and both turned out to be catastrophic mistakes. The first came in 1539, when Spanish explorer Hernando de Soto arrived in Florida carrying domestic pigs. He intended to use them as a food source, but many escaped. They spread through forests, swamps, and grasslands, breeding freely and establishing feral populations across the southeast. Then came the second mistake. In the early 1900s, wealthy landowners and hunting enthusiasts began importing true Eurasian wild boars from Europe. These animals were larger, stronger, and far more aggressive than ordinary domestic pigs. Eventually, these boars encountered the descendants of the escaped domestic pigs. The two populations interbred, creating a hybrid unlike anything North America had seen before. The result was the worst of both worlds. The new hybrids inherited the size, strength, and aggression of the Eurasian boar, while retaining the remarkable reproductive abilities of domestic pigs. With few natural predators capable of controlling them and an ability to thrive in forests, feral hogs spread across the state at an extraordinary pace. Their range continues expanding northward by nearly 8 miles every year, steadily pushing into new territory. But their impact goes far beyond numbers. For Texas farmers, this wasn't an environmental problem. The disaster machine. The wild boar is not simply a large pest that you can control. It is a biological machine engineered through centuries of evolution. A female wild boar, called a sow, can reach sexual maturity and begin breeding at just 6 to 8 months old. Her gestation lasts approximately 4 months. The average litter produces 4 to 6 piglets, but when food is plentiful, that number can reach 10, and within 1 week of weaning those piglets, roughly a month after birth, she is capable of becoming pregnant again. 2 full litters per year, year after year. This is why feral hog populations grow so quickly. Their expansion isn't gradual, it's exponential. Remove 100 animals from a property and leave even a handful of breeding females behind, and that entire number replenishes itself in less than 2 years. But the reproduction rate is only half the story. What the wild boar does with its population is where the damage becomes impossible to ignore. The animal's most destructive weapon is its snout, a dense structure of cartilage attached to a set of neck and shoulder muscles. The behavior is called rooting. A feral hog pushes its snout into the ground and plows forward. As it moves, it tears up soil, roots, irrigation lines, and crops. A single hog can destroy 6 to 7 square feet of land in just 1 minute. Now picture a sounder, a family group of 20 to 30 animals working the same field for hours. The damage is not agricultural, it is geological. Texas farmers lose an estimated $118.8 million annually to wild boar destruction. A single sounder can demolish $10,000 worth of crops in one night and return the following night to finish what remains. The most disorienting part for most people is this: only 5 to 10% of that damage comes from the animals actually eating the crops. The remaining 90 to 95% is caused purely by the rooting and trampling, the physical act of destruction itself. And for decades, Texas did the one and only thing: the fight back. If feral hogs were multiplying faster than they could be controlled, then increasing hunting pressure should have brought the numbers down. So the state made it as easy as legally possible. There was no closed season, no bag limit. Landowners could remove hogs year-round, day or night. It sounded like the perfect solution, but it wasn't. The problem wasn't the hunters. The problem was that hunters and wildlife managers often had very different goals. The massive boars with broad shoulders, thick necks, and curved tusks. Those were the animals that looked impressive, mounted on a wall. Unfortunately, those weren't the animals driving population growth. The real engine of the invasion was the breeding females. From a population control perspective, eliminating a large boar might look dramatic, but the population barely notices. Wildlife officials across the country learned this lesson repeatedly. One of the clearest examples came from Tennessee. In 1999, the state began encouraging public hunting as a way to control feral hog populations. As interest in hog hunting grew, some people began illegally transporting live animals to new locations. Instead of driving hours to hunt hogs, they released them closer to home. New populations appeared in places where feral hogs had never existed before. The animals were spreading faster in the backs of trucks than they ever could on their own. Then came bounty programs. On paper, the idea seemed simple: pay people for every hog they kill. But bounty systems created a different problem. The moment money becomes attached to an invasive species, some people begin thinking about supply. There were documented cases of individuals maintaining local populations instead of eliminating them. Every attempt to solve the problem seemed to create another one. Trapping appeared far more effective than hunting. A properly placed trap could remove multiple animals at once rather than a single hog. But feral hogs had another advantage. They were smarter than most people realized. A farmer might set a small box trap and successfully catch 1 or 2 animals. The rest of the sounder was watching. The animals that escaped learned to associate the metal structure with danger. Once that lesson was learned, approaching a similar trap became far less likely. Professional trappers even have a term for it. They call the animals trap smart. The animals were adapting, learning, changing their behavior in real time. Texas wasn't just fighting a rapidly growing invasive species. It was fighting an invasive species that was becoming harder to catch with every mistake humans made. 3 strategies, 3 failures, and a population that kept growing by 18 to 21% every year, regardless of what was done to stop it. Texas needed a new strategy that could solve this problem. The moment everything changed. That breakthrough came with an unexpected piece of technology. The rise of cellular trail cameras gave farmers something they had never had before: real-time eyes in the field. That may not sound revolutionary, but it changed everything. Before these cameras existed, a farmer who wanted to know what was happening on his property had to go looking for answers himself. The problem was that every visit left behind human scent, human noise, and human activity. For an animal as cautious and adaptable as a feral hog, that was often enough to change its behavior. Farmers were trying to solve the problem while constantly disturbing the very animals they were studying. In many ways, they were operating blind. The cameras changed that overnight. A farmer could mount a camera on a fence post, leave the area completely, and receive photographs in real time without ever setting foot in the field again. For the first time, he could watch without being seen. Night after night, the cameras revealed patterns that had previously been invisible. They showed exactly when a sounder arrived, which trails the animals preferred, which fields they targeted most often, how many hogs were traveling together, and even which breeding females were leading the group. The hogs had no idea they were being observed. For the first time in the conflict, the farmers had the intelligence advantage, and that intelligence led to an important realization. The old box traps weren't failing because they were poorly designed. They were failing because they were incomplete. A box trap might catch 2 or 3 hogs from a sounder of 20. At first glance, that seemed like a success, but it wasn't. The remaining animals escaped, and every escapee learned something. They learned where danger existed, and the next time they encountered a similar structure, they stayed away. The problem wasn't the trap. The problem was leaving survivors. Once farmers understood that, the entire strategy changed. The real challenge was no longer figuring out how to catch a feral hog. It was how to catch all of them at once, with no survivors left to carry the memory forward. Texas didn't need a better trap. It needed an entirely new kind of trap. So that's exactly what they built, building the perfect trap. If catching a few hogs at a time only created smarter survivors, then the trap needed to be bigger. The small box traps that had been used for decades were largely abandoned. In their place came large corral traps, heavy steel enclosures designed to capture an entire sounder at once. These weren't built for 2 or 3 animals. They were built for 20, 30, 40, or even 50 hogs in a single operation. But size alone wasn't what made them effective. The real innovation was patience. Once the corral was built, farmers didn't immediately try to catch anything. In fact, they did the exact opposite. They left the gate wide open. Corn and other bait were scattered both outside the trap and deep inside the enclosure. Then they waited, for especially cautious groups, even 3 weeks or more. During that time, nothing happened. At first, the animals fed cautiously around the outside. A few would venture inside. Then more followed. Night after night, they entered the enclosure, ate and left without consequence. It became part of the landscape. To the hogs, it was simply the most reliable food source around. They were returning to what looked like a free buffet. Meanwhile, the farmer was watching everything. Cellular trail cameras transmitted photographs and live images directly to a smartphone. Without setting foot in the field, farmers could monitor exactly when the sounder arrived, how many animals were present, and whether every member of the group was entering the enclosure. This information was critical because catching most of the sounder wasn't enough. The goal was to catch all of them. Then came the final piece of the system: remote trigger gates. Unlike traditional traps that closed automatically when an animal touched a trigger, modern corral systems allowed the gate to be controlled remotely. The farmer could watch the trap in real time from miles away and decide exactly when to close it. So when the sounder arrived, he didn't act immediately. He watched. Until every member of the sounder was safely inside, the farmer made his move. One tap on a smartphone. The gate dropped. From the hog's perspective, the change was sudden and confusing. One moment, they were feeding normally. The next, the exit was gone. For the first time, farmers weren't removing a few animals and leaving the rest behind. They were removing entire family groups at once. No survivors meant no escaped hogs learning how to avoid the trap. No trapped smart animals teaching others what danger looked like. No sounders passing that knowledge to the next generation. After decades of fighting feral hogs one animal at a time, Texas farmers had finally found a way to target the entire group in a single, carefully planned operation, erasing entire bloodlines. The first time this system worked exactly as intended, it changed the way many farmers thought about feral hog control. Instead of spending months chasing animals across fields and woodlands, a farmer could now sit in his living room and watch an entire operation unfold on his phone. What might have taken months of conventional trapping and hunting had been accomplished in one operation. More importantly, the breeding females responsible for future population growth. The real breakthrough came when farmers realized they couldn't fight this battle alone. Because feral hogs don't recognize property boundaries, individual victories often disappeared at the fence line. So farmers began doing something unexpected. They started sharing information. If a farmer spotted a sounder moving across the northern edge of his property, he could warn the landowner next door before the animals arrived. This changed everything. The strategy started to resemble a coordinated campaign rather than a collection of individual efforts. And the approach unfolded in 3 phases. The process began with observation. They studied where the boars traveled, when they moved, and which routes they used most often. Once they understood the animals' routines, they launched the main operation. The goal was to capture as many animals as possible at the same time. But there were always a few survivors. To find them, farmers used additional methods, including thermal optics, helicopters over large open fields, and trained tracking dogs in thick brush. The real success came from the complete system working together, leaving the animals with nowhere to escape, winning the unwinnable war. One more thing emerged from this transformation that nobody had initially planned for. The captured boars didn't simply become a cost. They became a commodity. The meat, lean, distinct in flavor, marketed as wild harvested pork, found its way onto restaurant menus and into specialty markets. Chefs prized it for the qualities that made it nothing like commercially raised pork, a gamey depth that farm-raised animals never develop. The revenue generated from wild hog sales is relatively small compared to the scale of the damage they cause. Texas farmers still lose an estimated $118.8 million every year to feral hog destruction, while nationwide costs exceed $1.5 billion annually. No meat market is large enough to offset losses on that scale. Complete eradication remains unrealistic, but the economics weren't the most important change. Feral hogs had been viewed as nothing but a liability, a constantly growing problem that consumed time and money. Now, at least some of the animals removed from the landscape generated value. Remote-triggered corral systems capture 88% of targeted wild boar populations in a single operation. In practice, it is the difference between a failing strategy and a viable one. For the first time, the new system consistently clears that threshold. Farmers who had been absorbing $50,000 in annual boar damage are reporting losses dropping to $5,000 or less. The population is not eliminated. New animals wander in from adjacent territories, and the breeding cycle never stops. But the coordinated network catches those arrivals before they establish new sounders. In the end, a network of Texas farmers sitting in their homes and watching camera feeds on their phones found a way to fight one of the most destructive invasive animals in American farming history. This story shows that even a problem that seems impossible can be solved with the right strategy, patience, and teamwork. So what do you think? Did this approach change your view of how difficult problems can be solved? And what does it say about what ordinary people can achieve when larger institutions struggle to find an answer? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video and subscribe for more stories like this. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.